Oh, I'm so excited that we have Donna on the show. She's an award-winning astrologer with a master's degree in social work, and she has over 45 years experience as a professional astrologer and a very solid background in other disciplines like flower essences and healing tools. She's the internationally known author of 15 well-received astrology books, 20 years of advice columns for Dell Horoscope, and thousands of astrology articles. She's just incredible. She was born in 1942 and has over 70 years of experience managing her Gemini stellium, so 3 planets clustered together in Gemini. And she's just written the only known reference book on stelliums called the Stellium Handbook. So we'll be picking Donna's brain and learning all about Natal Stellia.
Lovely. Well, the Psychic Viewpoint is proud to present Stephen Frampton with Donna Cunningham.
Thank you, Stephen. Donna, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
We're honored to have you, Donna. We've been raving about you all week.
Oh, great.
We're really excited to learn from you. You've got an incredible experience, and I know that you've written the only handbook, the only book on stellia, the stellium.
Yes, well, for many, many years, people would only write, a paragraph about it, now and then. But in this era, today, there are probably, I would say, more people with stelliums in their natal chart than have ever existed. And the reason for that is because over the last 50 years, two of the slower-moving planets, they weren't always the same two, but there were always two of the slower-moving planets. And when you've got two such planets, then, let's say it's in Virgo, and then now you're in the sun sign Virgo, you might have the Sun and Mercury and Venus as well. So, and then, from Virgo it went to Libra, and it went to Scorpio and Sagittarius and Capricorn and Aquarius. So that it just kept building a momentum through the last half of the zodiac, where there were all kinds of people born every year with these stelliums that involve the outer planets, and they are the strongest kind of stellium. By the way, 3 planets doesn't make a stellium, but it may make a triple conjunction, and triple conjunction has a lot of star qualities. I'm thinking of people, for instance, born with Pluto and Uranus in Virgo in the 1960s, and then on top of that, maybe they had Mars or something like that. Johnny Depp and Robert Downey Jr. They both had Mars, Pluto, and Uranus conjunct as a triple conjunction, and they've been blockbuster stars. And I think Whitney Houston had Venus there, and it's just a lot of charisma when you get something like that. But a stellium is 4 planets, and I think that's actually a little harder to manage. So in my research, I didn't find as many top stars with stelliums. But if you're coming into a consultation room with clients, you're likely to find a lot of them these days.
It's fascinating, Donna, really fascinating. And I want to ask you whether you consider a stellium to be a good thing, a bad thing, or what the pluses and minuses might be.
Yes. Well, I won't kid you. They're a little hard to live with. It's kind of like, it's kind of hectic. It's like being the head of a household where there are 4 lively teenagers, and with all the tumultuous ups and downs of that age. There's always someone demanding attention. Somebody's always mad at you, or they're feeling abused and put upon, or they want you to lay out money. Well, the 4 planets in the stellium are kind of like that. They're so close together. You see, a stellium hardly ever is more than 30 degrees, and it might be that the 4 planets are even closer together. Like Prince William, for instance, has a stellium, and the 4 planets are in about 15 degrees, half a sign, you see. So it's a lot of energy focused in one area of life, and that can be a difficult thing. It's a challenging thing. And yet when you focus that much energy in just one little part of your chart, you can accomplish a lot of amazing things. If you understand, and this is one of the reasons I wrote the book, you see, with so many people having these combinations, there's a lot of talent out there. There's a lot of exceptional people. I mean, it's amazing to me the young people that have it who are doing incredible things, with music or the arts or sports or whatever. They're just doing incredible things with these concentrations of energies. And so I wrote the book because every one of the planets has a good way of being used, and every one of them has a bad way of being used, and the key to it is being consciously aware of what your potentials are if you have some of this, and how you can use those energies well. And I've developed a lot of tools. The book is full of tools for people to get more insight so they can get more out of their stelliums.
And Donna, do the 4 planets have to be just within 30 degrees of each other? Or do they have to be under the same sign or in the same house, for example?
Well, there are 2 different kinds of stelliums. One is a stellium by sign, meaning that there are 4 planets in that one sign. They don't have to be in the same house, but it's stronger and more important if it is in the same house. And likewise, there are stelliums by house, 4 planets in the same house of the zodiac, of the chart. There are 12 houses, but to have the concentration of 4 is very, very powerful because you're focusing all your energy on a certain area of life. And the good thing about that is you can accomplish a great deal. And you can have quite a body of work that you accumulate in the course of a lifetime. So a stellium by sign is one thing, a stellium by house is another, and if you have your stellium is in one sign and one house, then it's really a powerhouse.
So I have, Donna, 3 planets, the Moon, Venus, and Mercury, all at 9 degrees Aquarius. So
My goodness, yes.
That's a triple conjunction, right? The Sun is not far away, but it's in a different house and it's in Capricorn.
But that kind of again, the triple conjunction is a powerful focus of energy. And you said the Moon, Venus, and what?
I have the Moon, Venus, and Mercury at 9 degrees Aquarius in the 5th house.
Well, that's very creative, and it would make you quite the performer. And I think you'd have a gift with young people. Teaching them things about themselves in perhaps a very entertaining way.
Yes, later in life, I'd like to create a school for gifted kids and have a very strong academic, but also very strong metaphysical education. That's my plan.
Yes, that sounds great. And that's, as I say, the kind of where your stellium or your triple conjunction is, the house that it's placed in. I don't know if your audience is aware of all the houses, but the 5th house is the house of both children and performance and making things fun. Let's say if they were in the 3rd house instead. The 3rd house is about communication, and it might be one for writing, for instance. It depends on the house where the stellium is placed. One thing you'll notice if you I don't know if your audience has seen charts of people with stelliums, but what's remarkable about them is, of course, you're going to find that one focus of energy. I mean, some of the charts I've looked at, Taylor Swift, for instance, has 7 planets in Capricorn, and they're mostly focused, they're between the 5th and the 6th house. But then what happens when you've got a focus like that is you also have a lot of empty houses. And I believe that is the intention. I believe we do are conscious before we're born, and we have a hand in choosing, our focus, our purpose in life. And so the chart for when we're born reflects that. And, there are a variety of things that would be your purpose in life. But if you have a stellium in one house, then the matters, the areas of life that you're really here to focus on are in that house. And as a result, there are lots of empty houses, meaning that your energies are not focused so strongly in those other areas as they are in that one house. It's kind of, but with that kind of focus, over the course of a lifetime, you can accomplish a great deal in that area. There is a learning curve with a stellium. I wish, the reason I wrote this book really was for the young people with Capricorn and Aquarius stelliums that are, they're coming up now. If I had had a book like this when I was in my 20s, it would have made my life a lot easier. What really helps is understanding who you are, why you're here, so that you don't start off feeling how strange you are, and why can't you do the things that other people can do? Well, because you're not here for that. You're here for, let's say, to work creatively, or maybe you're here to help, people from another country who are struggling, whatever. The chart will kind of tell you that.
Wonderful, Donna. So anybody that has a triple conjunction or a stellium can use the workbook to better understand themselves and their path in the world, and it explains to them the importance or the focus of the house that the triple conjunction or stellium resides in.
Yes. Now, the way that I wrote this book, I took great pains, believe me. It's not easy to write simply about something like astrology. And yet my intention throughout was to write it in everyday language that the newcomer to astrology could use. Because if the people with these stelliums and triple conjunctions, they probably are not going to have time to study astrology, because they're busy with their music or their art or their computer program, whatever it is they're here about. So I tried to write it in language that they could read, and step by step through each chapter, I add layers and layers of insight. You'll learn about your stellium sign, then you learn about the house, and you learn about the individual planets in the chart, the outer ones, and sometimes it's likely that you will have conjunctions, both triple conjunctions and regular conjunctions of two planets, and how do they all work together, and the main focus is on learning how to manage your stellium, to do things that enhance your abilities, not to do things that would be going down the wrong path, to self-defeating behaviors and so on. So with each layer that I add on, there's like a self-test. The purpose of the book is to create what I call a stellium worksheet, which is a self-inventory. And it talks about the positive uses of a sign, for instance, and then the self-defeating uses of the sign. And you go through and you rank, how often do you use those qualities in a positive way, and how are you maybe using them that it doesn't help you. So you can consciously work toward getting rid of the patterns that don't help you, and to capitalize on the strengths of the sign or the planet or the house.
I've seen the book, Donna. I've seen the handbook and worked through it. It's absolutely brilliant. It's very, very useful to actually work through it and reflect, as you said. I do want to ask you a little bit about some of the tougher planets, some of the more challenging planets like Pluto or Neptune. So if a person has Pluto or Neptune within the stellium, what advice can you give them about avoiding any problems that those planets might present?
Yes, well, the thing is that there aren't any bad guys among the planets, but surely the slower moving ones, and it's common to talk about the outer planets, but I talk about the outermost because I include Saturn. Saturn isn't as quickly moving, and its effects aren't as light as, let's say, Mars or Jupiter or something like that. And so when Saturn is part of the stellium, then it colors the stellium just as Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto do. But what I do in the book is these self-tests that tell you what Uranus is good for and what you want to avoid, and then you get to rank where you are in terms of the constructive traits and the not so constructive traits. And then what I do is add tune-ups. In other words, these are sort of like stress relievers, because it can be stressful to have your stellium include those slower moving planets, and even some of the signs are more difficult than others. My stellium, thankfully, is in Gemini, which is a little bit lightweight, but it's more difficult, for instance, for those young people born in like 1988 to 90 who had quite a lot of planets in Capricorn. Capricorn takes a lot more growing into, let's say, than Gemini does. So these little tune-ups, these little helpful hints of what you can do to ease the stresses of those outer planets, plus the insight that comes from monitoring, are you using Pluto in a constructive way or a destructive way, So the more awareness of how you're using these parts of yourself. Now, the planets, I always say it's not that the planets are doing anything to us. They simply reflect these different parts of ourselves. And one of the tools is to dialogue with those parts of yourself. For instance, if you know that Uranus gets restless if authority figures are coming down on it, or if you're not allowed to be who you are, and so on, what can you do to ease that off? And frankly, sometimes I brought my Uranus is the lead planet, which is the very first planet in the stellium. It's important. It's called the lead planet because that's the first response when a new situation comes up or during a transit. So you have to be very aware of that first planet. And mine is Uranus, and sometimes it really gets mad when it doesn't get its freedom, So I have a little dialogue with it. At one point when I was writing the book, it was really long and really hard, and I could tell my Uranus was getting frustrated, So I said, okay, look, I know this is hard. You've got to be free. What can I do to make this better for you? And that part of myself spoke up and said, iPad. It wanted an iPad. And that did help, And so anyway, there are all kinds of what I would call workarounds for these difficult planets. And to become familiar enough with that part of yourself to know that, oh, that's my Uranus talking, or that's my Neptune talking. And what can I do to ease it? What can I do? For Neptune, for instance, it might be that dance would be a good outlet, or music, listening to music, or going swimming, or doing Tai Chi, that there are different, for each different planet, there are things that are helpful and soothing.
Wonderful. I wanted to ask you a question about thinking about children. If we think of a kid that's living in a small town and they feel a little unusual, perhaps they have a stellium, would living somewhere else help them to feel better about who they are and find other people like themselves?
Yes. Well, first of all, thankfully, we're in an era when they don't have to necessarily go anywhere to find people who are like themselves. You can find them on the internet, in forums and whatnot, and chat rooms and stuff. But yes, I would have to say that some of us are too strange, or different anyway, for the towns we grow up in. I certainly grew up in a town of very small town, And I got away to New York, before I actually finally found out where I belonged, But what's interesting to know is that astrology, and I talk about it in the book, there are a lot of different kinds of astrology and a lot of different tools and systems that can help people. And relocation astrology is a specialty in which an astrologer can help you find a place on Earth that is good for you. It's the tool is called astrocartography, and it's not because stelliums are so complicated with everything gathered together like that. I would say don't do this yourself. It's not a good do-it-yourself project. Get to somebody who is certified in that sort of work. And there's a website called continuum.net that has articles, lots, 50 articles about relocation astrology, and it has a list of people who've been certified in the methods to use. But yes, I do believe that the feeling, a lot of people with stelliums can tend to feel very alienated, and sometimes it's just good to go to a place where people understand you, and that you can share with, if you have what I call a mission, you have a purpose, a use for your talents, and you can be in a location where that particular field is developing, and you can be up on the state of the art and be with other talented people who are working on those gifts, that could be a blessing. That kind of move could be the greatest thing that has ever happened to you.
And how does that work, Donna? Is it based upon the location's sun sign, for example? So if I wanted to live somewhere that was very Aquarian, how would I go about identifying places that resonate to Aquarius?
Yes, it's not quite like that. Have you ever seen an astrocartography map?
Yes.
Right. It's a map of the world with all these lines on it. They take your birth information and run it through this program to lay out a map of the world. And it'll show places, again, it needs to be interpreted by a professional who's studied this, but can find the places in the world that would put your talents and abilities to the best use. And the funny thing about it is, for instance, one of my spiritual teachers, one of the people who influenced me, was from India, and I have a Jupiter line going through there, and the Hindu word for Jupiter is guru. And so the one person I would have called my guru was born on a line where my Jupiter was placed, And also some of my books are very popular in certain countries I've never even visited, but they've been translated and so on. So there are a lot of uses to that map. Even if you don't move somewhere, your work might have an impact on that life, on that place, or that place, people and art or fabrics or whatever from that place can become part of your work. It's very interesting.
It is. So it also could help us to understand where our work would be best received or most popular.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yes.
Wow,
especially,
that's fascinating.
Say, the lines that are where it's on the midheaven, when one of your planets is on the midheaven, are important places for your career.
Fascinating, Donna. It's fascinating. Well, I know you talked a little bit about healing, and I know that you're very interested in flower essences and healing. Do you believe or find that some healing tools like flower essences, for example, resonate to different signs of the zodiac or different planets? Is there a correlation?
Well, yes, I do. I just finished revising my ebook on flower essences, and because the most people who ever bought that book were people who are into astrology, I moved up the chapter that talks about astrology and the essences, and also on my blog, this is Skywriter, it's Sky Writer, like writing, like this, so they write in the sky. My blog, skywriter.wordpress.com, has dozens and dozens of articles on how to get to use the flower essences that match your astrological needs. There are essences for Saturn and for Pluto and for the signs, yes. Like, for instance, Virgo, people who have a strong Virgo or Capricorn might need beech, which is for a Bach remedy for people who are overly critical of themselves and others. There's one for Cancer, is honeysuckle, and that's for people who have nostalgia or who feel homesick. Every planet and every sign has a bunch of essences that might help them. And so with a stellium, you would pay particular attention to the essences for that particular sign. And they're listed in the book. I go through each stellium sign as to, a stellium sign might be different than a moon sign. It's a different focus. But in each case, I will list the remedies that are good for that sign.
Fantastic. And is that book available on Amazon, Donna?
No, I haven't gotten that far yet. It's available on my blog, skywriter.wordpress.com.
Okay, wonderful, Donna. Well, Donna, we're going to take a short break just for 1 minute, and then we'll be back with more questions.
Okay.
A new era in psychic services has begun. PsychicAccess.com. You can connect with our psychic advisors by telephone or chat 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All of our psychic advisors are interviewed, fully verified, and accuracy tested, assuring you quality service. We're living in some very troubled times right now. More and more, the world's problems are affecting us on a personal level. You don't have to deal with this alone. Our highly accurate psychics, caring advisors, and talented mediums can help with situations you are currently experiencing and can let you know what the future may hold for you. All new customers get a free 6-minute reading. All you have to do is register. Why not visit us now and get a free reading at psychicaccess.com.
I wanted to ask you, Donna,
on the break,
a question
one
that
of the
my
hosts
colleague...
was asking me about aspects to the stellium.
Stephen, go ahead and ask Donna your question.
Well, thank you very much for letting me ask this question, Donna. It's very nice to talk to you. I would like to know about aspects that are cast to a stellium. Does it affect all the planets in the stellium, even if they're out of orb of that aspect?
I think you would, like, for instance, the conjunction in a stellium. It could be what you call a rolling conjunction, where planet A is conjunct planet B, but it's a little far for C. And I'd say the same thing for, let's say, a square or an opposition. Because if the planets are all kind of in a series of, then you would extend the orb for the square or whatever, because the planets that are more exact are pulling the other ones in. And the same with the transit. By the way, one of the things that's difficult about a stellium is that when you get a transit to the first planet in the series, the transiting planet will continue to go on, and it'll form the aspects, whether it is a conjunction, which is very powerful, or say a square, or maybe a nice trine that makes everything flow. It starts with planet number 1, and it just goes boom, 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 until it leaves the sign where those aspects are being formed. And that can, if it's a difficult planet, like, let's say, Pluto, and Pluto's already part of the stellium, then that's really an important era. But I call it that this happens to us in various times of life. Maybe 1 year Saturn will be going through all those aspects, and a few years later it might be Uranus or something. That nonetheless there's a sort of pattern that's formed by the order of the planets in the stellium. And I call that a story arc, because it's kind of like, it's coming around again. That maybe 5 years ago when Saturn was there, a certain progression of events happened, a series of things happened, and it worked out a certain way. And now this new planet, maybe Uranus or Neptune, is now forming those series of aspects, and the same issues will come up. It's like I say, it's a repetitive story arc in your life. And it can get better, you see. The better you're able to use the planets in the series, in the stellium, the better the results you're going to get from the transit. But it's good. What's good about this, you see, is that the book will explain to you what all those pieces of your life are about, and how you can know when you're going off track again, you see, and pull up short, so that you don't go down the same path and make the same mistakes over and over again. Again, that's a wonderful thing that astrology gives us, is the insight.
Oh, thank you very much for that, Donna. That cleared up a big area of confusion for me. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Stephen. Donna, what about somebody that was born in, say, 1989 with Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn all standing next to one another in Capricorn?
Yes. This is a very, very unusual event. It is something I call a super conjunction, when there are three of the slower moving planets standing together. We've had a lot of instances in the last 50 years of two of those slower moving planets standing together, like Pluto and Uranus, or Pluto and Saturn, or whatever. But this is so rare that the last time that happened was in 1307, and the one before that was 625 AD. So you can see that, astrologers don't even quite understand it very well, because it's never happened before in this lifetime. So it's extremely rare, and yet because it's very slow moving, it was Uranus and Neptune were close together for almost 10 years, and the Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn was about 2.5 years, I think. But what was interesting when I researched it was that I went through the ephemeris, and every single day in 1989, those three planets were within a 10-degree range of one another for an entire year. And that means that every single child born on the planet in 1989 had it. So that is beyond unusual. That is really, really rare. And it just, quote, coincidentally happened that the world birth rate was the highest ever recorded. There were 138 children born around the globe in 1989. And it was also true of 5 months of 1988 and parts of 1990. So as rare as this is historically, there are millions and millions of people born with this combination. And that is essentially what impelled me to write the book, because I can remember what it was like to be in my 20s. In your 20s, you're making very important life decisions. You're choosing your life path, and you're figuring out where you fit into the scheme of things. You're figuring out your career. You're figuring out what your relationships are all about. Those are basic life decisions that every person in their 20s has to make. But those young people born with that triple conjunction in Capricorn had I had to somehow reconcile those three very different energies. I mean, how do you be Saturn and Neptune at the same time? How do you be, stable, responsible, and at the same time be creative and dreamy and kind of lost sometimes in your own dream world? I mean, Saturn is down to earth. Those are two of the pair. But then throw in Uranus, which is so quirky, it's so its own person, it's so rebellious and mavericky and all that sort of thing. How do you make those three things work together? It's kind of like, Saturn rules Capricorn, Uranus rules Aquarius, Neptune rules Pisces. It'd be kind of like three people, a Capricorn, Aquarian, and a Pisces, living together in a studio apartment. I mean, how do you do that? So I don't envy them that they're struggling to make all those three things work together. It's a very difficult thing. And the only thing I will say about it is that Capricorn is by itself a late blooming sign, because the things it wants to achieve are so much more difficult and so much more ambitious in terms of climbing that mountaintop, like the goat does. And so these are, you hear, I heard such really heartbreaking stories about how much difficulty these young people were in trying to make those things all work together inside themselves. That was a great impetus why I wrote the book and why I wrote it in everyday language, because I would hope that this would reach some of those young people and give them sort of a clue as to what was special about them. Why are they here? Why do they choose to be born with such a thing? Because I think they have something really special to offer the world, and I really think, you've probably heard of soul groups. That
yes.
In terms of incarnating, there are people, there are groups, large groups of thousands of people who have a single purpose in a certain way, or they're aligned with one another. And for them to all be born around the world with this combination, I think they're very much here for a purpose. And I think that because it's in Capricorn, that part of why they're here is to save the earth that we are decimating so much, or to bring the world together in more peace.
Do you feel as well, Donna, that these kids born with Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn conjunct in Capricorn will perhaps feel led to question the structures and traditions of
believe
governance
me, they
in the
already
world?
Do.
Sorry?
The thing is, they already do. They can be rather cynical about what's going on because they're so perceptive about the hierarchies and the structures and so on. And a lot of them are quite depressed, because they don't see a place in the world for them, to be who they are and to work with their talents and so on. Or they go to college, and there's no jobs, So I think they're really struggling at this point in time. But what my hope is for them is, at about 28 to 29, there's something called the Saturn return, which we all get at around that age. But in their case, it's very pivotal because when Saturn has gone clear around the sun and gets back to Capricorn, it's making the same aspects again with Uranus and Neptune. It's going to be a very major time for them. And what happens to a lot of us is that we're not really grown up when we're 21, even though that's the law, that we're now adults. We're really coming into our own at the Saturn return because we're mature enough to see what we're here for and what we want to accomplish, and we're getting settled into our life purpose or our work or whatever. So I have great hope. But I forget what year they get their Saturn return. like 2020, 2018, something like that.
And that looks like a very interesting time astrologically as well, 2020 and the 2020s generally. I want to ask you, Donna, if you don't mind, about the 20th of April this month, because we have what we call the Cardinal cross, as you know, the four signs making a square in effect, which is a very challenging dynamic. What's your view on that Cardinal cross that occurs, or that it will be exact, on the 20th of April?
I wish I could say wonderful, glowing things about how transformative this is. But you know, you have to. What I think about when I think about these aspects is that Pluto and Uranus will be exactly square, and there is a cycle of aspects between Pluto and Uranus. This is, I'd say, more like Richard Tarnas or Dennis Harness's field, because it really affects us through, through the political, economic, environmentalistic, the whole realm of things that impact individuals through mass movements. And when Pluto and Uranus were, when I was born, they were sextile. When my generation was came of age in the 1960s, you can imagine all the kinds of, it was a conjunction, and all the kinds of activities, political activities, protests against the war and, discrimination and all that kind of stuff really came to a head in the 1960s. Now, the square before that was in the 1930s, with World War II and the Great Depression and all kinds of political, economic, and social unrest going on. And now we're back to a square with Pluto being in Capricorn. In the 30s, it was Pluto was in Cancer and Uranus was in Aries. But now it's Uranus in Aries again, but Pluto in Capricorn. So again, we're at another square. And so it's more about what does this whole cycle of aspects between Pluto and Uranus, what does it do? And it's often a time of political and social upheaval. Now, in the 60s, I think we made great progress in changing some of the inequities and so on. Oh, there was a time, the last time Pluto and Uranus were conjunct, it was in 1820 or something like that. No, wait a second. Yeah, it was just before the Civil War began. So again, it was political injustices and so on that were coming to the head. So I'm hoping, I haven't seen any indication of it yet, but that the ultimate outcome of this series of squares between Pluto and Uranus will be some kind of reform in terms of injustices and inequities in the world, but I don't see it yet. But anyway,
well, it's interesting, Donna,
then
that today
when you add in Jupiter and Mars, it's a time when that sort of thing will get activated, I think.
There is quite a lot of controversy, Donna, today about the treatment of prisoners post 9/11.
Oh, mm-hmm.
That's come to the forefront today, and that there's a request to declassify evidence about how prisoners were treated.
Yes, yes.
It's a good example of that.
I think prisoners in general are not treated well, especially minority people too, But yes, I think there's we're just bubbling at the head of something about the problems of misuses of power against especially against people who protest or who are different.
Interesting times.
Indeed.
So, Donna, can you tell us when people have a stellium or triple conjunction, what advice can you give them? What things should they do to better understand themselves? One obviously is working through the handbook.
Yes. Well, there is a chapter, part of what goes with such complexities and internal, there are internal conflicts often in the stellium, especially when the outer planets are involved. And to know that we have to work out how to make those two energies coexist. But along with it, there builds up a great deal of pressure and a great deal of stress. And the last chapter of the book talks about ways we can relieve the stress, ways that we can heal anything that has hurt us as we've tried so hard to find out who we are. There are so many different forms of healing, and also just supportive measures like EFT, which is also called tapping, which you can, they're sort of like acupressure points, but you tap on them in order to relieve anxiety or grief or whatever. Flower essences, again, the Bach remedies, they're from England, and they were developed during the Depression, and they address such things as, perfectionism when you're too hard on yourself, or stored up grief, or they're not a magic bullet, but they can catalyze our insight and understanding of the things that internal conflict, And there are also things like goal setting and how to use astrological timing to succeed in your work, and just quite a lot of them. Oh, and the power of intention, like, oh dear, I don't remember his name. Wayne Dyer, that's it, Dr. Wayne Dyer. How to use the power of intention to achieve what you want. Or another thing called thought forms. Have you ever noticed that, you may really, really not want a certain thing, but you keep attracting it? Often there's what's called a thought form in your energy field, your aura, that by thinking the same things over and over and over again, the same negative things, it's crystallized into its almost solid form, and it draws in the very things that you don't want. Now, there are positive thought forms that attract the positive things, but it's the kind of thing that gets in the way. I mean, I don't know, sometimes people start to feel like they're metaphysical morons, because they've affirmed and they've, done positive affirmations and visualizations and all of that, and nothing changes. And it's often because there's a thought form of one kind or another. So that particular chapter, the final chapter in the book, goes through a variety of very simple, inexpensive healing tools that people can do to get rid of the blockages that their stellium, has experienced, and get, onto a path where they can really achieve the things they want to do.
Well, Donna, it's been absolutely wonderful to have you with us. You've got so much knowledge; it's just incredible. Now, you've just finished this book, and I know that you're a very prolific writer. What do you plan next?
You can blame that on my stellium in Gemini. I have four planets in Gemini, including Mercury, and I live to write. I've been writing all my life, and yet this is the point I want to make. That people grow into their stellium, and after, they build on it, and they build on it, and they build on it, so that your best years of using your stellium can be in your 50s, 60s, 70s, But that is why I'm prolific, Thank you very much. And like I say, the stellium handbook I've written it, or struggled anyway, to write it in language that people could read and understand, even if they've never studied astrology. And it's something also that a professional astrologer can use to help these stellium people that are going to more and more and more be coming to the consultation rooms.
Wonderful, Donna. Well, I want to thank you on behalf of everybody that has a stellium or a triple conjunction for being so thoughtful and producing that work for them. And want to thank you for all of the wonderful work you do. Donna will be certainly getting hold of that book. I've got a copy that you kindly sent me, and I very much enjoyed it. I'll be studying it more times.
I think I sent you a link that you could put on your site that people could download some of the material from the book.
Yes, and that's on your website, isn't it?
It is on my website, but yes, it is. It's skywriter.wordpress.com.
Wonderful. Well, we'll certainly be checking that out, Donna. I want to thank you once again for taking the time out of your schedule to join us.
Yes, such pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
You're welcome, Donna. It's been wonderful, and we'd love you to join us again sometime in the future. And thank you once again.
All right. So long.
Thank you, Donna. Take care now.
Hello, my name is Res Miranda. If you're having relationship, career, or life issues, I'm inviting you to experience what it's like to have access to professional, highly accurate psychics and spiritual advisors you can trust to care and help you. Register now to get your free 6-minute reading by telephone or chat. Get answers, get access, psychic access, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. PsychicAccess.com.